Welcome to How to Decorate from Ballard Designs, a weekly podcast all about the trials and triumphs of decorating and redecorating your home. I'm Caroline. I'm on the marketing team.
And I'm Taryn, and I'm a product designer.
I'm Liz. I head up the creative team.
We're your hosts. Join the expert team at Ballard Designs for tips, tricks, and tales from interior designers, stylists, and other talents in the design world.
Plus, we'll answer your decorating dilemmas at the end of each episode.
We love answering your questions, so don't forget to email us at podcast@ballarddesigns.net.
Now, on with the show. Today, we are thrilled to welcome back to the show Marshall Watson. You may remember him from episode 156 when we discussed his first book, The Art of Elegance. And today, he's back to share with us his latest book, Defining Elegance, set to release this month. Marshall reveals his design principles through a variety of stunning environments, exploring how to marry history with modern sensibilities. For the first time, readers will also get to step inside one of his own homes and his garden, gaining a deeper understanding of his approach to achieving harmony in design. Marshall, welcome back to the show.
Well, thank you very much, and beautifully said.
Oh, well, you know what? Your book it truly is elegant. And I love how elegant is sort of the touchstone for both books. The first one being The Art of Elegance, the second one, Defining Elegance. And it's just so fun to see the variety of projects you have throughout. I mean, you've got Hawaii, you've got Florida, the Hamptons, Southern California. There's such a variety of spaces, including your own condo on the Upper East Side.
Yeah.
And you really get to see like such a variety of color and style, and the way you're really designing spaces for your clients' own personal stories and the locales that they're in.
And I certainly have a lot of frequent flyer miles.
True. You get to travel to really, really gorgeous places.
I do.
So,
I do.
yes.
I've been very fortunate in my career that I've been able to travel quite a few places. And we've always taken projects that interest us with people that interest us and people that we know that we're going to get along with. I think one of the great skills that our firm brings to the board is that we love to research. We love to immerse ourselves in whatever environment, whatever architecture, and of course the client themselves. We want to get to know them as deeply as possible. And my background in theater, I don't know if you know that I was originally a theater designer, and actually I was an actor. And
yes, I remember that from last time.
Many of those paths have guided me towards the designer that I am today. Because as you know, if you're designing a Shakespeare's Henry V, you're not going to do the same as a Neil Simon comedy. And also when I was an actor and I was on As the World Turns, I came to New York originally because I was on a soap opera. And I was on and off Broadway and did all of that for many years. But even I was always considered myself a character actor. And maybe that came from partially training as a theater designer, because you had to research and research and research. And then you let all the research go, and then you performed the character. But the character was something that, yes, it was part of you, but it was also, you had to observe and really delve deeply into the mind, the soul, and the experiences and the history of the character itself, which, of course, in getting to know clients and getting to know their environments and getting to know their dreams and their wishes and their hopes and their aspirations, what could be better training?
That is true. I wonder if there is, do you think a lot of designers have that background? Probably not, but you're right. It does work so well.
I think the wonderful thing about our profession is you can come to it from many different points of view and from many other careers. Yeah. I've known many people who have changed, not midlife, but in their 30s or 40s, sometimes even their 50s, from a banking career, from a studio art career, from real estate into this profession because they've fallen so much in love with the art of decoration.
So what was that transition like for you, from going from soap opera star to interior design star?
Well, it took a while to be an interior design star. I really, I had actually when my undergraduate education was at Stanford University in California, where I studied, believe it or not, engineering, art, and English, all of those three at the same time, and they melded together. Um, I came out of Stanford in 1975. There were gas lines, if you remember, because you're way too young, because you're probably my children or my grandchildren's age. And there were no jobs for designers, none whatsoever. But I was an actor and I could get work as an actor. So, speed forward to my years on As the World Turns and also, in New York on Broadway. I decided that I really did love this profession. I was doing what everybody does. You design your own home and you have a flair for it. I was also a painter. I was a landscape painter and a portrait painter. And so all of those skills came together. And I was a union scenic artist. I always forget I have a lot of professions. So there were many skills that brought it to me, but I wanted to really learn what the profession was about. So I went back to school at FIT and worked very hard on the many courses there that taught me many of the skills. And then, of course, I apprenticed for a while for several designers, which I think was invaluable to learn both their skills and the business side of it. But also you kind of learn what mistakes they go through, and you can make mistakes on the job training, and it doesn't cost you an arm and a leg in the beginning.
Well, one of the things you talked about, and I believe it was with, you were talking about a project in Southern California, and it was a very grand scale home. And you talked about one of your first jobs working for a designer, and she told you that if you solve
Yes.
the scale and proportion, then everything else will fall into place.
Everything else is the dessert topping. Yes, she did. She gave me this great advice about proportion and scale, and she said, "Marshall, if you get the scale and proportion of the furniture right, the interior architecture correctly, the decorating is just the cream of the crop."
Mhm.
But also, we always try to get the interior architecture correct in the beginning, and if we can't, then we use all the decorating tools in our toolbox to
Mhm.
solve those problems.
Yeah. Well, I really enjoyed that book in particular because I felt like it had lessons that were so applicable to so many of our listeners. This living room in particular that you were talking about with the scale and proportion story was very grand double-story living room, and it was triple-story living room, and it was very, very, very large.
Yes.
And I loved studying it because we often get people writing in because they have rooms that are double-story living rooms. And it's a conundrum. It's hard to get things to feel right. And so I wonder if you could walk people through some tools that you use to create a sense of intimacy in there
And to
and a
bring
sense of
the
scale.
scale down to a human scale.
Yeah.
I always recommend that all designers, all young designers, all old designers, and everybody in between, take a tour to Europe, take a tour to other places in the world to learn not only about other cultures, but about design, architecture, and interiors. And I think one of the most surprising things were when I went originally to Blenheim. And I was walking in the living room of Blenheim, and I was looking at the furniture, and Blenheim's living room was 4 and 5 stories tall. But the room was very articulated architecturally on the interior. So there was many details that went all the way up the 5 stories. That was one lesson I learned. But the other was that the furniture was just human scale. The sofas were probably 96 inches long. The chairs were normal sized chairs. And the lamps were perhaps a little bit taller, But you don't solve the scale of a gargantuan room by making gargantuan furniture. You really don't. You still have to make the room comfortable. Perhaps you need more furniture, and the furniture needs to have a relationship with each other. The furniture needs to talk to each other. A sofa with two chairs facing in is the obvious selection for many living rooms so that it can converse. You always think about it conversing. And in large spaces, sometimes you can raise the scale or the height of the back. You can raise it 2 or 3 inches, but you can't raise it 2 or 3 feet. It's going to look silly in a space like that because suddenly the people start looking tiny, right? So you need to make it comfortable, and frequently, like in Blenheim, it's layers. It's layers of beautiful fabrics. Now, some of the fabrics have larger scale to them. The carpets have larger scale. There's a sense of heightened color. The lamps have, substantial lampshades on them. They're not bare bulbs. So I noticed that there was volume in the room created by other things, but not simply by making gigantic furniture to fill the space.
That is a great point. And one of the things that I noticed in your work too, and looking at your new book, is that you do a really fantastic job of making multi-purpose areas within one space. So just kind of that tip of like adding more furniture is really fantastic because you could use it to make a games area or an additional seating area or something more to the room versus putting a big oversized sofa.
Exactly, because floor plan, scale and proportion, of course, but you must start with the floor plan.
Yeah.
And the floor plan, I find tremendous creativity in the floor plan. And you can fit all different forms of scale of furniture. I think there's nothing more boring than a room that has matching sofa, matching chairs. And also what kills it is the matching proportions of the chairs. Everything's 36 inches deep, everything's 34 inches tall. Varying the heights, varying the depths, really helps in terms of these very large rooms. And also, as you were saying, people are living in one room quite frequently. Most homes, they used to call them great rooms. Now they call them family rooms. Most people are living in one room anyway. So why not arrange it so that you can have an area for art projects and now backgammon and mahjong and puzzles and all these things, a game table area. And also you can have a dining table in back of your sofa. The British are so brilliant about in the backs of the sofas. They don't just leave them blank. They bring either a desk or a table, and sometimes they dine there, at the table, facing into the beautiful room. But also you can do your desk work. You can have your desk there. And then you want to make your sofa just a little bit bigger so that all the clutter, you hide it from the rest of the room.
Well, we have had like 400 episodes of this podcast, and for some reason, seeing that living room in that project in California, I was like, oh my gosh, this totally clicks. Like everything that a person is interacting with, the chairs, the side tables, the dining chairs, the sofa, is human scaled. Everything that you're not really touching, the curtains, the drapery, the lighting, the mirror, the urns on the fireplace, the mantle, that was all scaled to the room, but then the
furniture was
yes,
not.
the furniture
actual furniture was scaled to the humans. There is another trick in rooms like that, and I've learned it. There are several projects, and I'm so glad you've said, by the way, that it is a book that you can learn from, because I work so very hard in every one of the chapters to try to have some lesson that somebody can walk away with, both visually and verbally. Another thing in very large rooms to bring to is that if you notice, you'll see chandeliers. Now, they may be very contemporary chandeliers, like a wrought iron chandelier. Maybe it could be a crystal chandelier. It could be, but many, or lanterns. I use lanterns frequently, but they're hung lower in the room. And also, once again, at human scale. Like normally, a lantern about, you can hang a chandelier as low as, well, depending on the height of the ceiling, but in these very large rooms, you can hang it up to down to 8 feet and down to 7 feet 6 inches, depending on your basketball player friends. And we do have friends who have enormous basketball friends. And we're always saying, okay, what's the height of your tallest friend when I come into these little colonial houses? Because then I know how low I can hang everything. But that also brings the scale of the ceiling down, too. And if you notice, the curtains also help, too. Now, the curtains in that one, in all of those instances, the rooms are tall.
Yeah.
So I don't object to the curtains that go all the way up. I want them to go all the way up so that we celebrate the height of those rooms, but it also gives it tremendous softness. There's a lot of fabric in those curtains.
Yeah,
but
expensive curtains, but
I know.
They do their job, yes.
They're called window treatments because you get the treatment when you buy them.
I love that. Well, it's so funny because we always, even those, that room, it had those 3 arched windows. And we get that question all the time. I think we answered one last week because the arched windows are so challenging and difficult to figure out how to dress. And you do what pretty much all designers recommend you do, which is just mount the rod above the top of the arch and don't chop the arch in half. And
don't do that.
Yeah.
Don't do that. But you will see in my book, you'll notice there is one drapery treatment that I've used actually in my own book, in my own home. And it's in the chapter on our and it is a very high-waisted treatment. Sometimes you can, we've done many treatments over Palladian windows and over them where it's actually shaped at the top, but then it's drawn back very high, just the way the Empire dresses were. If you think about the women, remember how, all the fabric fell right below the bust line. And it made the women seem like they were, 10 feet tall. And it's a treatment concept that the British did so beautifully in John Fowler and Nancy Lancaster's period. Yeah.
When you were talking about floor plans and creativity in floor plans, and I did notice that throughout the book. And there was one project in particular. It was that Kansas City penthouse apartment, and it's a very large room, and you've divided it in half, and the floor plan looked to be like a mirror image or symmetrical.
Yeah,
you've got an L-shaped sectional, and then you've got armchairs on the other side. But then in the middle of that arrangement, you had some floating Louis armchairs. And I thought it was so unusual because now I'm not a designer, so I didn't think that it would work. I was
done 400 of these, so you're pretty much
I like to ask questions.
At this point.
No, but I was like, I would not have thought that floating the Louis armchairs in that arrangement would have worked. But I want you to tell me why it worked and maybe some guidelines for floating furniture, because I do think that's scary for a lot of people, myself included.
The room was a very large room, and they entertain constantly, and they're very philanthropic. So, and they have all sorts of different. She's been president of her garden club, so they'll have meetings there. So there was a need to have areas, large areas for large groupings of people, and also that they could break up the area. Also, it was a square room, and there was a spectacular view at one end. So I designed it so that you entered, and the back of the L-shaped sofas faced you. There were these, because I wanted to create as airy as possible. You'll see that there are these beautiful acrylic consoles that
Mhm.
sit behind them to kind of separate the entry foyer, because the entry foyer just bleeded in. I always want a sense of entry, so I always try to create
Mhm.
a foyer. And then there are the two L-shaped sofas, but beyond them, and this will lead back to the Louis the 16th oval back chairs. Beyond them, there was still a lot of room in which they wanted to have small areas. They're both readers, but they also want to be able to have a glass of wine. And so those chairs actually over there are swivel chairs, so that they can swivel towards the view. And they're high above this area called the Plaza in Kansas City. And at Thanksgiving time, there are these incredible Christmas lights. They line every building with Christmas lights. So people want to sit very close up to the windows and see that. So that allows for that area. And then floating in the center, because you don't want those chairs. If there was a very large group of people, they could indeed not. They could take the Louis XVI chairs out, but the Louis XVI chairs create a more intimate area between the two, and there was enough room to have the L-shaped sofa, a normal size coffee table, the two Louis XVI chairs, and then beyond them, the double groupings of swivel chairs. Does that make sense?
It does. It does. And I was
had you could be intimate, you could be grand, you could have a cocktail party, and also those chairs, because they're very light, can be moved out of the way, and so you can have an enormous cocktail party.
So it was the versatility. Yeah.
It was a versatility, as well as intimacy.
Are there particular silhouettes, colors, styles that you find are best for floating, like Louis chairs?
I think that floaters are the most exciting chairs because you can go hog wild with them in terms of design. So you can have absolutely the most contemporary floater chairs in a room. They don't have to be the largest chair. They can be something like a slipper chair. And it's great if they have legs, because then they have a certain flexibility in which they can turn around. But one important thing you said is silhouette. You always want to appreciate the silhouette of the floater chairs that you're looking at. And remember that the floater chairs you're going to see, you want them to be beautiful from the front, but you also want them to be beautiful from the back. For many clients, we use their dining chairs. And why do we use their dining chairs? Because usually they're lighter. They're usually on four legs. But also the dining chairs, if you notice, you see the back of the dining chairs. You never see the front of the dining chairs, because everybody's pushing the chairs up to the table. So dining chairs are a good way a flexible way of using floater chairs in the middle of the room. But I love to have exciting chairs in the middle, either very contemporary or traditional. Just a beautiful silhouette. That's what's important. And
Okay, so interesting silhouette, leggy and easy to pick up.
Easy to pick up, easy to move while people are there, so that they can just pull them to one side. Now, just to go a little bit of history, because Billy Baldwin was really the great master of this. Billy Baldwin was a very short man. He was only about 5'2". I saw him only once in the elevator at the D&D building, and he was meticulously dressed, but he was so short, I almost bowled him over, because I'm not big, but he was tiny. And he designed his slipper chairs. If you've ever seen them, they're absolutely tiny. And it was a way of sitting in the middle of the room that he designed them. He didn't design them to sit straight on. And of course, now you can't see me. But he designed them so that, because if you think of the 40s, 50s, and 60s, the way people sat, they sat there, their arms would go over the back of the sofa. They'd be talking to you like this, and then their legs would be crossed over each other.
I love to sit
Both
like that.
women and men would do that. And if you see all those great fashion illustrations of that period, you see that people actually sat that way, and that's the way he designed them. But they were tiny chairs, and men as well as women were very comfortable in them.
Is that to keep their cigarette ash from getting on the upholstery?
BINGO.
I always love to sit like that, though. It kind of gives you like a lean. You got a cozy little lean thing to lean up against. And
it's very elegant. If you have great legs, and you're wearing great slacks, and you have wonderful socks and beautiful shoes, please.
And it, placed, depending on where they're placed in the room, you can you have so much flexibility in your conversation, right? You can talk to those people over there.
There you go.
Then
It's
those
also
people over there
flexibility.
have a better conversation. You can flip around, and so you can kind of
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's a decorative, silhouetted, light swivel chair, if you think of it that way.
Right.
But don't put the swivel on it because then it becomes this big mashed potato sitting in the middle of the room.
I feel like people don't, certainly designers do, but I feel like people don't appreciate that flexibility of the slipper chair. And so, I remember talking to someone at some point, and they were like, "Why would I want a chair without arms?" And I'm like, "Oh, well, it's such a great design."
So now we'll go once again into floor plans because of what we as a firm, Marshall Watson Reed Dean Gaines, what we specialize in. We always want to make sure that a room has seating for everyone.
Mm-hmm.
So in my long checkered history, I have found that men really like to have arms. They really like to have arms.
Mm-hmm.
Slipper chairs not really great for guys. They like them deeper. They do like sofas. You'll see frequently that a man will just plop himself down on the sofa. And I'm not being, women do too, but it's generally I found that men enjoy sofas and that women enjoy perching more. I don't know what this says about society, but they're only observations that I have to provide solutions for in terms of seating. So things like ottomans, things like slipper chairs, things like harder surface chairs, especially if you're a host or a hostess, you want to be able to, sit quickly down into the seating area, talk with everybody, and then the lasagna's
timer's
in the
going
oven,
off, yeah.
and the timer's going off, and you have to dash without ruining the conversation,
Mm-hmm.
right? So there's always, and as people get older, you will find that older people prefer the harder seating as well. So your grandparents are going to probably go to a hardback and a seat with a hard
A chair they can get out of.
Yeah, the chair that they can get out of, exactly.
Yeah.
And also by the fireplaces, I always like to have chairs for the children, little, because there's so many cute little chairs that were created in history. And I do love, obviously I love antiques, and I love antiques for a number of reasons, but I like antiques because it's the ultimate recycling, right?
Mm-hmm.
And there are
Yeah.
so many available, and so many things were built so beautifully in the 18th century, 19th century. And why pass them by just for, just for style?
Yeah. Well, you said something a minute ago that I'd never really thought about, but it's so smart about having different depths.
Yes.
And I feel like that's an easy way to kind of think about, okay, I need something that's like 36 to 40, and then something that's more like
26.
20, yeah.
And 24 and 18, and also ottoman really service too. Ottoman are perchable, and people can sit on the ottoman too. They just have to be high enough and comfortable enough. And people do, for sofas, you kind of need to make the cushions on the sofas higher. I love the Italians. Man, I love the Italians, but I have no idea how they sit on their sofas. They're 16 inches tall, 16 inches tall. We Americans, we're tall. We're tall, and we're well fed too.
Yeah.
So, we have to, you need something that's between 18 and 20 inches, but 16 inches, it looks great. It's great for lounging and having, your earphones on and when you don't want to talk to anybody. But boy, you have to have really good stomach muscles to keep yourself, to pull yourself out of those things.
Yeah. Any woman that's been pregnant knows the challenge of a really deep sofa. You're like, wait, I can't get out of here.
Needs to come with a prying stick.
Yeah. Hey, there was also such a funny story that made me laugh out loud in I believe it was the project in Southern California, the other Southern California. No, I'm sorry, in Napa. And you were talking about choosing. Well, for one, you talk about continuity in your projects and how that's something that you think of in your firm as being sort of a touchstone of your work, finding these design elements and weaving them throughout in different ways. Maybe it's a tone of wood or the interlocking rings in the Hawaii project, and
yes,
pulling those.
Thank you.
themes throughout different spaces, which I wonder if you could just talk to that a little bit, because I find people ask about that as well, how to make their home feel cohesive and polished in that way, but without necessarily threading the same color palette or the same styles, making them unique, but also cohesive at the same time. Are there
rules and lessons? There are. We do pride ourselves in being giving a home a cohesive, comfortable, livable, peaceful feel to it. And I feel that by drawing the world together, drawing the rooms together, having not necessarily themes, but having certain materials, certain certain paint colors or certain molding colors, certain floor colors. There are that can pull the rooms together and also give you a larger sense of space, so that you're not being jolted from one room to the other. So it's very important, the design of the floors, the material of the floors, the material of the walls, and the ceilings, and how we handle all of that. Crown moldings, casings, all of those details to keep a cohesive feel. I don't really believe in eclectic. I don't like the word, and I really feel that it's a lazy man's way of going. I don't mind junk around the room, because those are the human things that the clients bring in. But our job is to create the dream platform, the dream backgrounds for a family to live in. I think that sometimes stylistically, in California, we're going to design curtains in a certain way. Like in that project that you were talking about, almost every curtain is sheer, because every single room opens onto the pool area and opens onto the vineyards that are beyond. And the feeling of opening these windows and then this very light, fluttery breeze that comes in, the air is soaked with the sense of lavender and acacia and all these incredible scents that you want to bring in. So the curtains will have a similarity of feel, or at least of tailoring. They can be completely different fabrics, but they may be tailored the same way, so that we bring a cohesiveness there. I'm big on doors. I know it's really funny, but I love the doors to be interesting, specific. If we're given a place where we aren't doing any renovation, as you know, we do so much architectural work, our own firm, so we generally have the choice of materials and our interior architectural as well as exterior. But for instance, we'll paint the doors. I always feel that the doors should get a special treatment of some sort. Whether in that project it was these horizontal boards that the doors themselves were actually 8 feet tall, and they were only 36 inches wide. So what we did was we built them out of these cerused oak horizontal boards with gaps in between them that actually made them seem actually a little bit more less tall and less narrow, but it gave real interest to them both inside and outside. So that unified the space, unified the house together. I also think that a use of floor materials, carpeting, either wall to wall or the project in Connecticut, you'll notice that many of the carpets that are hand woven have a Scandinavian feel to them, because the house had a Scandinavian feel to them. So they're woven in many of the 1950s and 1960s great Scandinavian styles that we so champion. So there's that inner feeling, but it's subtle from room to room.
Right. Well, I'm sorry, I got myself off track, but the story that I loved was you asking your partner is this the ugliest thing you've ever seen, or is it the greatest?
You know.
And I do find that is sort of a,
That's
even
my favorite question to ask my
well,
team, my design team.
yes.
Yeah.
We actually run into this all the time when we are pulling rooms together for our spaces and our collections. Sometimes you're like, this could be terrible, but could also be great. And do you find that coming up, it's like in your work, but truly, like, you're pushing the bounds a little bit, and that
We
yeah.
in our own framework, we are always pushing the bounds. We are always looking to what is. I know it sounds funny. We're always looking to what is newest.
Mhm,
I hate to say, but we always look for good quality too.
mhm.
That's something that's really important to us. Um, but every once in a while, I mean, I can't know everything that's happening in the market, and
Mhm.
I'm not 16 years old anymore, so I'm interested in all the wonderful things that people in my office bring to me. Um, and when we were doing this project, the client she was very adventurous and she wanted something a little more cutting edge for Napa, and she wasn't at all stuffy. She was really, and she had fabulous artwork. So we came upon these lamps at a secondhand shop, and the lamps were, they were like $60 a piece. And we're gonna make on $60, we're gonna make, $10. So I didn't care that every once in a while you gotta give your client a break, right? But I looked at Mercedes when I saw them, and I said, the glaze seems really fabulous to me. The shape is so weird. Is it
It's like a
is it
gourd in a
hideous,
yeah.
ugly, or is it really fantastic? And we decided that it was fantastic. And actually, once we put a really beautiful and appropriate
Mhm.
shade on it, the lamp came alive, which is always true with lamps. And I really do think that you can jump on the diving board a bit with lamps in your homes.
Uh-huh.
You can, if you're really timid, I gotta have that 18th century chest, and of course I love 18th century chests. I have two of them myself. But if you really want to do something, you can express yourself, your more adventurous side in the lamp
Mhm.
itself. But careful of doing the lamp and the lampshade at the same time, because
Ah,
that's the
okay.
problem with the Ramada Inn.
Okay.
They try to do both at the same time.
Okay. So if you've got an adventurous base, you gotta be a little more classic and tailored with your shade,
And if you have a boring base, go for it with the
with the
shade.
shade.
There's
Love it.
so
Yeah.
That's
it's
great.
so much fun to do. I mean, because we do work all over the country, it's fun to go down to West Palm Beach and do Dixie Highway
Mhm.
and see, all of the things that they brought back from the 60s, 70s, and now of course the 80s, all this stuff where, people do go there to to push up daisies. So there's a lot of things that
Mhm.
that come available down there that don't everywhere else.
Yeah.
But of course, there are so many great there's so many great shows all over the country, in Texas and Massachusetts, and all of them.
Mhm.
They're fantastic.
Yeah.
So you find all this weird stuff.
Yeah.
And then there are shops that we go to the shop because it is weird. Because
Yeah.
because we, but we don't take the clients in there, because they're gonna think, "Marshall, what happened to you? Where's the old classic, wonderful man who's defining elegance?"
But the weird things are the personality, right?
There you
Yeah.
go. There you go.
Yeah. So, okay,
And
I
sometimes
like
off
this.
kilter, a room can't be too perfect. It really can't.
Mhm.
It's funny because I learned this in gardening. One of my great heroes is Frank Cabot, and he was the founder of the Garden Conservancy, of which I'm on the board, and I'll push it a little bit. And they have a great program, Open Days, which for only $10 a piece, you can see the greatest gardens in the country,
Wow.
created by many individual people, and they're all year round. But Frank Cabot's book is called The Greater Perfection. And, gardening teaches you, y- it teaches you that perfection is a hard is It'll never happen.
Mm-hmm.
It'll never happen. And Mother Nature's never going to let you. You have that beautiful hedge, and then suddenly, it was made out of box, and now we have a box blight, and so
Yeah.
half your hedge goes, and then the deer decide that those peonies really did look good, even though they weren't supposed to. And the night before your garden tour, they eat all the peonies. So and so. Gardening has taught me a great humility and a great, of course, connection to the earth, but has taught me a lot about decorating as well. That decorating, I can go into a home and I quote Billy Baldwin all the time because I can go and finish it according to what they want, to what they dream, and everything that I've helped them along discover and put together and realize. And then at the end, I just say, okay, it's now your time to come in and mess it up. So go ahead, mess it up, because you got to bring in, the pictures of Aunt Lizzie. You got to bring in, no matter how unfortunate she was in that really ugly frame. You do that.
You just photograph it for your book before all of those things come in.
But I'm lucky. I'm lucky. I put you can see there's a lot in. I do like environments that are calming, peaceful, harmonious, balanced. Obviously, I like symmetry. Mainly because of the ease. I feel that most people want their homes to be, of course, inspiring and uplifting, but they do want them to be comforting and cohesive, and a place where they can let go, let loose, but also inspire them at the same time. So I think that's where and what is elegance about other than comfort and ease and inspiration and civility and kindness.
Yeah.
All these wonderful things that a beautiful home can give people.
I love that. Well, you know what? We have a decorating dilemma that one of our listeners has sent in, and I'm curious if you could help them answer it. Are you up for it?
Have you ever known me to say no?
No, that's perfect. That's what we like to hear.
So let's go. I'm
Okay.
hoping that I'll be skillful enough to answer the question.
All right, so it's from Allison, and she says, "Thanks for all of your work on the podcast and all of the amazing advice every week. I would like to make a change in our bedroom, but could use advice on paint colors and specifically what to do about our tray ceiling. I don't love the tray ceiling, but it would be expensive to remove, so we're keeping it. I also don't love our current paint color, Sherwin-Williams Pussy Willow. It sometimes looks purplish to me. And I don't like the way the tray ceiling is currently painted. The other element that is at play is the small hallway vestibule leading into the bedroom, which we are planning to wallpaper and paint. We selected a moody green wallpaper and plan to paint the trim and ceiling a dark green. I would like the hallway and our bedroom to complement one another. Given the hallway colors, what would you recommend? Would you recommend going dark or light in the bedroom? Should we paint the trim, walls, and ceiling the same color to make the tray ceiling less noticeable, or have contrasting trim? How would you treat the tray ceiling? Will painting the strip of gray around the tray ceiling white to match the ceiling solve all of my problems? The room is northwest facing, if that helps. A few other things I'm looking for in this room are an attractive ceiling fan and a throw for the bed. If you have any suggestions, I'd love to hear. I've attached photos of my room. The windows you see are the only windows in the room, and the hallway vestibule has no windows. I'm also planning to get a wood and arcane headboard at some point, so feel free to ignore the current one. Thanks for your help, Allison." So yes, she's got a bed. Her bedroom has 3 windows, and her bed is sort of pushed up against the window wall. And she's got a tray ceiling. The walls are painted white, but of course they've treated the underside of like the tray as though it's ceiling. And so it has this strange sort of like break at where the ceiling is. And then there's crown molding in the tray. And so it's sort of like, it almost looks like a soffit, I guess.
It does look like a soffit. And she doesn't want, I know this sounds crazy, she doesn't want to remove it, does she? Because there's the air conditioning system right in there. That's what it's doing, blowing directly down on the bed. Okay.
Yes.
I see that.
So she's thinking that wallpaper in the hallway and painting the trim to coordinate like sort of this it's kind of like a deep green blue, gray green blue. And then she's also sort of got this deep teal. So what would you do if she's wanting to put that wallpaper in the hallway and then wanting a wallpaper for the bedroom that coordinates back to the hallway, but she's unsure whether to do like a dark or a light?
Allison, it feels like the hallway actually I would personally like the bedroom to feel lighter and brighter. You do have a tremendous amount of light in there.
Mhm.
And I like your choice of the wallpaper. I think with the colors that you're choosing right now, I actually like the color of the paint color.
Okay.
I feel that I I feel that the soffit is difficult. What bothers me about the soffit is that the windows seem to recede behind the soffit. So I'm going to tell you a couple other things. I know you want me to answer directly about the paint colors. May I answer something
Of
differently
course.
then?
Yes, you may.
The windows, it feels like the windows need to have more presence to them. The bed needs to move further out. I would like it very much if I could put curtains on either side of the windows to expand them visually in either side. That
Okay.
would also lessen this sense of depth that's going into the tray ceiling
Oh,
above.
interesting. Smart. Yeah.
Um, and also the window. I think that the windows are nice, but they appear too small on the walls. So
Mhm.
the curtains will help you. Of course, I'm not talking about covering up the windows. No, no, no. You're going to put the curtains on either side. Um, I really love the wallpaper, and I almost want you to use the wallpaper in the hallway because I think that it's a lot of wallpaper. And for the and I it's hard to tell the scale of the wallpaper. I
Mhm.
think that there's probably a 2-inch or 3-inch repeat, and it feels very small. If you are going to do a wallpaper in the room, I would do a much larger print if I were you.
Well, she
And
said she was going to do the wallpaper in the hallway. So is that
So I do like the
okay?
wallpaper in the hallway. I
Okay.
think
Got it.
that would be great. And if she wants to make it extra dramatic, yes, certainly she can use that. Uh, she can use the either of those paint colors. I tend to prefer the green because I think it looks like a dark green. And in
Mhm.
any case, I prefer that as if you're going to use that as a molding color, but you might also consider that as a ceiling color too,
Okay.
and keep the moldings light. Um, I just don't know how much, it's very dramatic to paint all the moldings dark,
Mhm.
but at the same time, uh, you have to make sure that you have a lot of light in the room coming into the room. The soffit is difficult. I tend to want to create the paint color going all the way up into the soffit so that the soffit disappears.
Mhm.
The way you have it right now, it's like this white stripe across the ceiling,
Mhm.
and it screams there's a soffit there.
Yeah.
So either you don't paint the interior of the uh, of the coffer, don't paint it,
Mhm.
um, and leave it white, or paint it all the way up, and then do the curtains on the sides. But it's a very dark color. I mean, are you sure you want to go that dark in the room?
Mhm.
Um,
What color would
but
you suggest if you could pick any color?
well, I would prefer something. Prefer something paler, whatever a calmer version of, whether she wants to use a very pale terracotta or very pale sage green. She seems to Allison seems to go for colors of greens, but there's a lot of black in everything.
Mhm. Okay. So I love your idea about the window treatments, like pulling away, like filling some of the space in between the wall and the
You're
soffit,
giving
right?
more architecture to the walls themselves, and also spreading the beauty of that room are these really pretty windows.
Mhm.
I mean, they're pretty, but they're very high on the wall too, right?
Right.
So, and they're rather small in terms of the amount of sheetrock that's in the room. So the curtains would help on either side to both lengthen them, draw your eye up to the soffit area,
Mhm.
and of course you're going to mount them right below the soffit.
Okay, that
And
was
you're
my next
probably
question.
right to the soffit too.
And how far, like, okay, she would do 6 panels, correct? So
Yeah,
2 on
I would
each,
prefer 6, 2 on each.
and then the ones in the middle, would they meet? Would
Ones
you
in the
have
middle, there's 2,
well, like the
there's 2 windows behind the bed, correct?
yes.
And isn't there enough room for panels on either side of those without doing a single panel?
Yes, yes.
Yes, there are. There definitely is enough room.
So would
It's a
she
very pretty room.
cover that entire expanse, though, in drapery,
No,
or would she leave a little
no,
sliver?
don't do that.
Okay.
Well, but then that's actually a creative idea, but I don't want to block the windows.
Okay.
There's we came into a bedroom exactly like this, where the bed was in front of it, and the previous owner had chosen to curtain the entire wall with a sheer,
Mhm.
but it felt oppressive. And I think that those windows are quite beautiful,
Would you
quite
keep the
attractive.
plantation shutter?
It darkens the room. It depends on if you want to modernize it a little bit more. We use translucent roller shades that are
Okay.
that not Romans, but they're roller shades that come down, and they're made of they look like grass cloth, very very thin cloth, and they're
Okay.
quite chic. But the what I do like about the plantation shutters is they give your room architecture
Mhm.
in this broad expanse of. But the curtains will help a lot in giving definition to the wall.
Mhm.
I would say that you're only going to do 14-inch panels on either side of the wall, 14 inches from the interior edge of the casing molding that's on the interior edge facing the window.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yes, I
Yeah,
think so.
that's great.
These are, well, listeners
very
will know that I
specific.
don't usually like plantation shutters, but these are good-looking ones, so
Yeah, they
yeah.
are good looking. Also, a way to you can paint the walls now. You can paint the walls any color, all the way up to the all the way up to the
crown molding.
all the way, yeah, we're all the way up to the real crown molding that's on the inside.
Mhm.
And then it's like draw your eye up into that space by maybe placing the same wallpaper that you're using in the hall up in there,
Oh,
flat
smart.
on the ceiling. So think of that ceiling as your fifth wall, and that you might want to treat that in some interesting way.
That's smart. Okay, so she's gonna. Okay, so in that idea, she would put a paper on the ceiling. She would keep the crown molding white, but then everything below the crown molding, including
Is a
the
color,
underside,
including the underside of the soffit. So you're
is the color.
continuing the room.
Yes.
And then the curtains because the curtains will bounce out almost 7 inches, and it looks like you have enough room so that, well, not 7 inches, 4 inches. So, and it looks like by the time you have your headboard there, you still have enough room in the room.
Mhm.
Floor plan, because
So she'll just pull her bed and headboard forward 4 to 5
Yeah.
inches so that
Right.
anytime she's moving the actual curtain.
She may
Yeah, she
not
has-
move the curtain. She's gonna use the plantation shutters.
Okay, yeah, but it wouldn't like the bed would never touch the
It's not
curtain.
never.
Yeah. Okay.
Because you're using those curtains virtually as kind of architectural pilasters,
Mhm.
almost, right?
Yeah.
To articulate the architecture of the room and draw your eye up, because that she is correct. The soffit and the tray ceiling shorten the room.
Okay. She did say something. I want to make sure we answer all of her questions. She said something about wanting. Didn't she say something about bedding? Yes, like a new ceiling fan, but also a throw or something on the bed to like add something to the bed. Any favorite bedding treatments? How do you make a perfect bed, Marshall?
Well, you will have, and I'm not selling my book, but you will have, 50 different ways of dealing with beds in my book, of which I think many are successful. I have bedspreads made, and literally bedspreads, because they're very light. And then I have one side made in one color and the other side made in another color, both so that I can reverse them, but also so that I can pull them back. I do beautiful sheets that are embroidered so that I can pull the sheeting material back. That's a king size bed? Is that correct? It looks like a king size.
Looks like it, yeah.
Okay, so on a king size, I stack the pillows. I will do 2 kings, and on top of the 2 kings, I use 2 standard pillows. So pyramid stacking, so that, first of all, it's comfortable. And I usually use shams because their shams spread out, and there's no problem with sleeping with a sham. What's the problem? And then I use 2 decorative pillows that are usually at least 22 inches square, sitting in front of that, so that they help you in terms. I mean, I read in bed. I do all sorts of things besides everything that you're supposed to do in bed, and I use those pillows against the headboard, as well as to help me prop up. I don't like. We're gone are the days of, there's never a pillow that I met that I didn't like. You need to eliminate the amount of pillows. So that's about all I feel you need. And then at the base of the bed, I have my duvet.
Yes.
And I do have an embroidered duvet, usually, meaning it has embroidery on it, and I triple fold it at the bottom of the bed, stretch it out. And then usually I have a bench at the end of the bed that I can kick that thing down, in the summertime.
Well, that's smart. I never thought of it for that reason, but I like that.
But what's great about the bed, what makes these giant beds more approachable and prettier, is the layers. That's what, then we're going back to the whole beginning of our conversation and what makes a giant room successful. It is the layers. It's many layers that you're adding on.
Yeah.
So, but it doesn't mean that the bed is fussy. It doesn't mean that it's fussy.
Yeah. Okay. I want to describe to you, you talked about the elements. So it's almost like you're dividing the surface of the bed into 3 parts, right? You've got like either your duvet or your throw at the end of the bed. You've got the bedspread in the middle, and then you've got the sheeting folded down in the top.
Right.
So you're
you
breaking
fold
it
back
up
quite far, back far, and then you have, and in the very back you have your stack of pillows that are stacked horizontally. I hate them when they're, Howard Johnson's does it this way, where they're up against, standing up, and that's old fashioned. Do them flat. They're flat.
And then, so if you're like looking aerially, like if you're looking down the bed, it's divided into halves or thirds. But then if you're looking straight on at the bed, you're dividing it into at least 2, if not 3, with your pillow stacks. So it breaks up like such a large expanse of mattress.
Exactly.
To where if you were just using one surface like she has currently, it looks. Yeah, like there's not enough.
It looks like you need to land a helicopter there,
it just looks bigger. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
So that's what I think helps in bedding. And I hate to sell our book, but I mean, I want to sell our book, but you will see many different bedding treatments that we use, and that's one of the most successful of making, and it's easy to make. The bedspread makes things so easy. Especially a light bedspread, and then you can live with it in the summer and the winter. I love duvets. But they are, and you can put a bedspread over the duvets, but then you're not dividing the bed. So,
well, okay, I love that formula. Thirds and 2 pillow stacks, generous pillow stacks.
Yeah.
All right, Allison, you have the secret formula now. So
Thank you, Allison. Thank you for bringing it to us.
Yes.
And you have beautiful windows. And remember, you always want to emphasize the positive and eliminate the negative. And the positive, you have beautiful windows and a really nice, generous master bedroom and a beautiful hall going in there too. Congratulations.
Yeah. I love the idea of having that sort of dark hallway, but then you have the lighter bedroom at the end, and it's sort of like drawing you in there.
It draws you in.
Yeah.
It draws you in, yeah.
Smart.
But you have to make sure you have enough light going in there, because late at night when you're stumbling in, you have that mahogany chest of drawers on the right-hand side. You don't want to land into that too.
Yeah, maybe she needs to put some lamps or some sconces or something in there.
And I'm kind of concerned about the dark hallway with that very dark piece of furniture. You know, it's gonna be very dark.
Okay.
So she might want to lighten the piece of furniture too.
Okay, that's a good suggestion.
And use that piece in the master bedroom.
Okay. Great suggestion. All right. Well, Allison, thank you for sending in your question, and let us know how it turns out. And Marshall, thank you for joining us again and sharing your lovely book with us. We really enjoyed seeing it.
It's been fantastic.
Yes.
It's called Defining Elegance, if we need to hear it again. And
yes,
thank
we
you
do.
all so
Tell everyone where they can find you and follow you.
I really had a great time.
Your, let's see, I believe your Instagram is Marshall Watson Designer?
Marshall Watson Designer is my Instagram, my personal Instagram. So I basically post almost every day and a little bit about my life too. And then there's Marshall Watson Reed Dean Gaines is our company with my wonderful partners.
Yes.
And that is our Instagram handle for Instagram. And we're also on Facebook, and we're on YouTube, and we have several lectures on YouTube, and we're on Pinterest as well.
I didn't know that. Okay. Love
and
that.
Marshall, your bedroom and your home is in Veranda this month.
Yeah, we happen to be on the cover of Veranda this month. I know.
Very exciting. What a big month for you.
It's very nice. Yeah. I know. It has been a really great... And 2 months ago, we were on the cover of Ocean Home.
Wow.
And this summer, we're going to be in Traditional Home. And next autumn, we're going to be in Hampton's Cottages and Gardens. And I will be lecturing all throughout the country. So I hope that if any of you are listening, you can follow my schedule.
Yes.
And I'll be coming to a city near you.
Where would they find that schedule? That is such a great tip, and I'm sure our audience will
It'll be on our Instagram, Facebook, and our accounts. We'll be putting it on soon, as soon as we've gotten it all
finalized.
It all scheduled and finalized. Okay. Yeah.
All right. Well, Defining Elegance. Thank you so much.
Thank you all so much.
Yep,
Let's
that's our
do
show.
it soon again.
Yes.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
And that's our show. You can find all of the show notes on our blog, howtodecorate.com/podcast.
To send in a decorating dilemma, email your questions to podcast@ballarddesigns.net so we can help you with your space.
And of course, be sure to follow us on social media at Ballard Designs.
Don't forget to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts so you never miss an episode. And please leave us a review. We'd love to hear your feedback.
Until next time, happy decorating.